unmistakable. Rwanda is preparing to orchestrate a carnage in broad daylight with a brutality that recalls the darkest pages of history. It is imperative that these combats cease immediately. Each hour that passes brings our region closer to a tragedy of an unimaginable scale. We refuse to see a repetition of a nightmare of 1996, this dark page in African history that we had thought had turned. Today, the victims are not only Congolese. This attack is aimed at Africa as a whole. I would even say against humanity as a whole. Rwandan bullets indistinctly hit South Africans, Tanzanians, Malawis, Burundi. Aggression is not only aimed against the Democratic Republic of the Congo, it is aimed at you, your mission, against your soldiers of peace that you have mandated to protect and not to be targeted. Let me be absolutely. Each hesitation undermines the credibility of forces of Rwanda, attacks in flagrant violation of the ceasefire of the 4th of August 2024, occupying strategic towns such as Katale, Lushebere, and Masisi Center before continuing on to Bweremana, Minova, and Kalunga. These attacks aggravate an already disastrous humanitarian situation, provoking the displacement of millions of Congolese, aiming to drive them out from their homes and establishing a parallel administration and modify the configuration of the region. In Goma, the RDF have deliberately cut the lines of supply for electricity and water. They have blocked strategic roads and used GPS jamming, endangering civilian and humanitarian flights. On the 19th of January of this year, the hospital of the Doctors Without Borders in Masisi Center was hit by a rocket, wounding 2 humanitarian workers. These actions, as well as the continued attacks against IDP camps, illustrate a clear violation by Rwanda of international humanitarian law and reveal the goal of DFR and the M23, which is to sow humanitarian assistance. We would warn against falling into the trap of the fallacious pretext put forward by the government of Rwanda, which has invoked the protection of one of our numerous minorities as justification for its interference. The reality is very different. Today, in the Congolese IDP camps, the victims are of all ethnic groups, including the Congolese Tutsis that are suffering the same tragic fate that their fellow citizens in the face of the violence of the Rwandan Armed Forces M23. So as we face this humanitarian disaster, it's clear that this crisis is directly linked to the economic plunder of the east of our country. The last report of the group of experts reveals the scale of the economic plunder by Rwanda in the east of the DRC. Each month, over 150 tons of coltan are illegally extracted and transported to Rwanda, where they're fraudulently labeled for export. This illicit commerce compromises the sovereignty of our country and finances military activities of the DFR and M23. In Rubaya, the largest site of mining of coltan in the region, the RDF and the M23 have established a parallel administration, exploiting our resources and imposing their control on local populations with complete impunity. These activities must be punished. However, this illegal exploitation is not only one aspect of the aggression carried out by Rwanda. Since the start of their campaign of terror in 2022, the RDF and the M23 have systematically targeted peacekeeping forces. The 24th of January of this year, Major General Peter Kirimwami Nkuba, military governor of North Kivu, was assassinated by Rwandan forces as he commanded on the front lines. On the 25th of January of this year, 9 South African soldiers, 3 soldiers of Malawi, and a Uruguayan soldier were killed in clashes with Rwanda and M23. A tank of the United Nations was set on fire, crossing a new threshold in hostility towards multilateral institutions. Furthermore, a company of Tanzanian Blue Helmets in Kanyabayonga remains surrounded and cut from all supplies by the RDF and the M23. The last report of the group of experts also revealed that their auxiliaries arsenal ground-to-air missiles, GPS-guided mortars, and anti-tank missiles. These flagrant violations of the arms embargo regime and international humanitarian law are a grave threat to Great Lakes region. These three dimensions, humanitarian, economic, and security, reveal an reality. We're seeing a systematic and coordinated aggression against the Democratic Republic of the Congo by Rwanda. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, the Luanda process, designed to offer a framework for a peaceful resolution, has been sabotaged by the intransigence of Rwanda. Each commitment undertaken in Luanda has been trampled on, starting with the ceasefire of the 4th of August. Also, since the establishment of the reinforced ad hoc verification mechanism in Goma on the 5th of November of 2023-4, Rwanda has never sent its 3 military experts to supervise the implementation of the ceasefire. You might recall that during our last meeting, on the 8th of December in this room, the permanent representative of Rwanda claimed that the experts were on their way to Goma. Today, 82 days later, they have still not arrived there. On the 15th of December, Rwanda intentionally sabotaged the summit convened by the facilitator of the Luanda process, His Excellency João Lourenço, by ignoring his invitation. On the 23rd of January, Rwanda surprised the entire world by requesting the mediation of Turkey, stepping away from the principles of African solutions to African problems. In spite of this flagrant contempt demonstrated by Rwanda for the Luanda process, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is fully committed and reiterates its trust in His Excellency João Lourenço. This process, endorsed by the African Union, is the only legitimate framework for a political solution to the conflict between the DRC and Rwanda. This framework, exclusively between states, cannot include non-state actors or elevate them to the same status as sovereign states. The Democratic Republic of the Congo will reject any attempt in the Luanda process, directing it rather towards this legitimate framework, that is the Nairobi process, under the facilitation of His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. The DRC reiterates its full confidence in him and rejects any attempt to dilute his efforts at mediation. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, in spite of the repeated warnings of the government of the DRC for the past 3 years, this Council has remained inactive. This Council cannot content itself with declarations of concern or simply to remain seized of the matter. Its mandate, its duty